Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Bully Project conference call. My name is Ryan Knowles. I am the moderator for tonight's call. I want to thank everybody for coming to tonight's call and participating with us. And we want to welcome Rebecca Randall from Common Sense Media. Tonight we're going to be speaking about cyberbullying and the implications of cyberbullying on school culture and school climate. Please give me a moment. We're just welcoming in a lot of people here. We've got quite a bit of RSVPs tonight for the call, and we're going to give it a couple more minutes before we get started. So welcome to the call, and please call out where you're calling in from tonight.
Angel Thompson, South Carolina.
Hey, South Carolina. You from
Jeremy Norman,
New York?
Jackson Ridge, New Jersey.
Welcome, New Jersey. Welcome, New York.
Diana King, Cleveland.
Hey, Cleveland.
Jerry
Claudia, Donna Claudia, New Jersey.
Right, welcome, New Jersey. Welcome, Massachusetts.
Alabama, Wisconsin. Florida. New Hampshire.
Hi, New Hampshire.
Hey, New Hampshire.
Sandra Prendergast, Connecticut.
Hey, Sandra from Connecticut.
Welcome, Connecticut.
Thank you.
Gordon Myers, Los Angeles.
Anybody missing from that perspective? So if we run a report.
Ann Hassey and Melanie Lawson from Hubbard, Ohio.
From Ohio.
Shelley McLean, Yakima, Washington.
Hey, go Washington.
Los Angeles.
Downing, California.
Double California, welcome.
Mary,
That was shown in a report that regardless, even if they didn't have a computer, right, they would still be in contact.
New Jersey.
Oh, New Jersey.
So good evening, everybody. My name is Ryan Knowles. I'm Outreach Coordinator for the Bully Project. We're just waiting for other people to get on the call. We'll probably start it up at about 5 past the hour. But we're so excited to have Rebecca Randall from Common Sense Media on the phone with us tonight, speaking about cyberbullying and its implications on school culture and also digital literacy and citizenship. So we'll get started in a couple minutes here. Please, as you come on the line, please feel free to call out where you're calling in from.
This is Mary
from Memphis,
Bay Area.
Tennessee.
Are you Skyping with Ryan? Is she on the call? Welcome, everybody. Ryan, can you hear me? Good.
Yep, we can hear you, Lee.
Okay. Right. Hey, everybody, welcome. If you're just joining us, go ahead and tell us your name and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Damon Lemons. I'm from San Francisco, California.
Hey, Damon, welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Monica Degalado from Kyle, Texas.
Hey, Monica, welcome.
Hannah Masters from Coeur d'Alene.
Hey, Hannah.
Arlington, Virginia.
All right, Arlington.
Elkhorn, Wisconsin.
All right, Wisconsin.
It's Michael Epstein from Location Labs in San Francisco.
Hi, San Francisco.
Hey, Michael, welcome.
Hey.
So everybody, welcome to the call. My name is Ryan Knowles. I'm the moderator on tonight's call. I'm the Outreach Coordinator for the Bully Project. We're going to have time for questions following Rebecca's presentation, but we will be putting you on mute during her portion of the call. But in order to chime in, we welcome questions to be submitted both via Twitter and our Facebook page using the hashtag #ExpertSeries, as well as also using the *6 function on your phones when we do open it up for the Q&A session. But before I begin, I would actually like to introduce Lee Hirsch, the director of Bully, just to give sort of an overview of the conference call series and to welcome you all here. Lee, go ahead.
Hi, Lee.
Hey, everybody. Well, I just really want to welcome Rebecca and thank her so much for being available to speak with everyone tonight. We, like I think everybody that's connected to this movement, are constantly learning as much as we can. And cyberbullying is certainly one of those things that's, been really hard to get a handle on, understand how it implicates at home, in our schools. It can be, a very gray area. And Common Sense Media is a fantastic organization. I encourage everybody to visit their website, learn more about their extraordinary work. And, I and all of us at the Bully Project have been very, very fortunate to have their support as, we've tried to understand and help just get the message out. So, Rebecca, thank you so much. And with that, I'll turn it back to Ryan and you guys. Oh, one more thing. Lastly, I just want to encourage everybody to continue to look at our amazing lineup for speakers that are still to come for this series. And, we've just been overwhelmed. I think we're now at probably over 1,000 people that have participated with us. And it's a wonderful coming together of our community. So thank you all, and please continue to join us for these conference calls. So again, thank you.
Thank you so much, Lee. And like Lee said, we're so lucky to have Rebecca and Common Sense with us tonight. She's been a great partner for us and has been featured in our Educators DVD and Toolkit as well. But just want to give you a little bit of background on Rebecca before we begin. Rebecca has worked for more than a decade in the nonprofit sector on behalf of children and families. She's worked in child and community development, education, and social policy. Recently, she was the Associate Vice President at the United Way of the Bay Area. She provided strategic direction for the education, managed a multi-million-dollar grant-making portfolio, and developed a comprehensive statewide early childhood initiative. Again, she's spoken at length about media and technology when it comes to children, and has spoken to over thousands of parents and educators, offering guidance on how they can raise kids who are safe, smart, and responsible media users and creators. Give me 1 second here, and I'm going to just unmute Rebecca, and we'll get started. Rebecca, are you there? Rebecca? Hello?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, you can. Okay, fantastic. I think that there may have been a challenge with my other phone, so I will move forward on my cell. Thank you, Lee and Ryan, so much. It's a pleasure to be participating on the call. As Lee said, Common Sense Media have been big fans of the Bully Project and the film since it came out. I met Lee in various places. We've shown up at conferences together, so being able to partner and collaborate like this to reach this audience is really exciting. So what I wanted to do was to help demystify what's really going on with cyberbullying and offer some tips for parents as well as educators on how to handle it, because fundamentally that's the most important thing, is knowing how we navigate it. So I guess to start, I wanted to raise the point that, just as bullying really occurs in school hallways or on school grounds, it also is happening in the digital world. And as a result, no longer is that stereotypical image of a bully being the big brute of a middle school boy shoving someone into a locker. It's now also the sweet-looking girl who's next door. And that's not to say that the bully on the playground no longer exists, because he does. It's just that there's now a lot of crossover between offline bullying and online bullying. And what makes the issue complicated is that it's hard sometimes to tell where things start, because while it may begin at school, it may end up online. And conversely, what starts online may end up playing out at school. But before going any deeper, I wanted to share what the technical definition of cyberbullying is. And that is when a child is, or I suppose an adult too, but when a child is intentionally and repeatedly threatened, harassed, embarrassed, humiliated, or shamed by another child using digital media. And it's happening at younger and younger ages. I think that oftentimes what we hear about are the cases where children have been bullied as teenagers, but we're finding again that it's happening even in elementary school. In the first large-scale study of its kind, Elizabeth Englander of the Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center, in fact, found that most elementary cyberbullying is occurring in online games. And what that looks like for younger children, it means things like mean posts in an online game, a text, an email, or even on a social media site, because we do know that a really large number of kids under 10 are on Facebook. It could also mean destroying or ruining another player's assets in a game, like their points or creations, or spreading rumors and lies about someone. And as kids get older, we can add in some additional examples, like sharing embarrassing or private pictures, videos, or information, impersonation, forwarding something that was private, or creating a slam page to demean someone. In a review of about 35 studies on cyberbullying in teens, Justin Patchen, who is one of the leading experts across the country, and his colleagues found that on average about 24% of teens have experienced some form of cyberbullying. And in examining those studies that included cyberbullying offending rates, they found that on average about 18% of teens reported cyberbullying others. Important to note here is that I keep using the term cyberbullying, but teens in particular, they may not identify with that term. Researchers Dana Boyd and Alice Marwick found that teens describe much of this kind of behavior as drama rather than cyberbullying. And it doesn't necessarily downplay the behavior, but they do so really as a protective mechanism. And they might not report the behavior because they don't want other teens to see them as victims. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But I think here it's important to point out that while face-to-face bullying behaviors might be experienced in addition to cyberbullying, cyberbullying is quite different from face-to-face bullying for a few reasons. Number one, it's anonymous, or oftentimes it's anonymous. Although kids being bullied often know who is doing it, one way that cyberbullying is different is that kids can be anonymous with mean comments and harassing behavior. And it's traumatizing because the target doesn't know who is saying what, and there's no accountability for what bullies say and do. That said, oftentimes kids, even in an anonymous posting, have a suspicion who it may be, but they're never really sure. It's also easier for kids to gang up and bully someone knowing that they're anonymous. I think an example of that and how it might play out is on the social site ask.fm, which lets kids ask questions anonymously and answer questions posted by other users. Kids also have the option of recording themselves with a webcam answering a question. And as with many social sites, some users keep things friendly and clean, while others post hateful comments or sexual come-ons. The site doesn't monitor content, but users can report behavior that's violent, pornographic, or contains hate speech. Interestingly, this site was noted by the British news website Mail Online, and it's been linked to the suicides of several teens. A second aspect that's different from face-to-face bullying is the disinhibition. Researchers have found that when people can be anonymous online or just even simply not seeing someone's face, this disinhibition effect kicks in. It's when people act in ways they normally wouldn't face-to-face or if their identity were linked to them. Number three, cyberbullying is incredibly public. It's just there's this huge scale to the internet. And because of this public nature of cyberbullying, it dramatically increases the intensity and hurt. So whereas with in-person bullying, a few students might see the incident and even it may trickle out to an entire classroom, with cyberbullying, everybody can see it. It's the whole school and friends of friends and their friends, and everyone really will know what's going on, which increases that sense of shame. for kids. Bullying also can happen anywhere, anytime online, and kids can't escape it by going home for the day. They feel like the world is closing in on them and they can't get away. And asking a child who is generally attached to their phone at their hip, logging off or shutting down the device doesn't necessarily really make a difference. The bullying can continue even though the phone is shut down, and then when the kid goes to turn it on, they've got 500 texts or messages, whatever it may be that they're then viewing. So they can't really escape it unless they shut down the technology altogether, which we don't really recommend as a solution. Number 5, it's permanent. So messages are really hard to take down. They can be cut, copied, pasted, and altered. I mean, we live in this cut and paste culture where once something is online, it's permanent and you can't really get rid of it and you can't control it. So there's this sense of helplessness associated with this feeling that everybody in the world out there can see these horrible and embarrassing photos of you and you can't take them down. And unlike a playground brawl in which a bully targets one victim, cyberbullying is often a group undertaking with an entire network of kids participating. And kids typically play different roles. And this is often true in both in-person bullying as well, where bullies, or sometimes we call them offenders, there are also the targets or victims, and bystanders and upstanders. Those are the kids who really stick up for the victims at different times. And the roles oftentimes actually will switch. So just to give you a little sense of what these roles mean in a bit more detail, a target is a person who's the object of some type of intentionally harassing action. An offender is someone who intentionally commits these acts to hurt or damage someone. A bystander is a person who passively stands by and observes without getting involved. And an upstander is someone who supports and stands up for someone else. So there are these big differences between bullying and cyberbullying, but similarly, kids who are being cyberbullied can experience the same kinds of emotional, psychological, and even physical problems, like feeling humiliated, embarrassed, depressed, sad, angry, not wanting to be around their friends, acting out in ways they wouldn't normally, afraid or embarrassed to go to school, have academic problems and lower grades, and self-esteem problems and damage to their identity. And for some kids, they may have suicidal thoughts and feelings and take action on them. And it's these kids that you typically wind up hearing about. And their stories are heartbreaking and tragic, and we need to learn from them. But it's also important to keep in mind that these cases typically are not the norm. They are the outliers. Most kids who are cyberbullied are more likely to experience 1 or 2 disparate episodes of bullying rather than repeated episodes. So that's important to keep in mind when we think about how to navigate that, both in a home setting as well as at school. But especially if it's just a handful of times, and even if it's more than that, kids who are the target of bullying often don't want to tell their parents, teachers, or other adults. And there are several reasons they feel this way. In large part, it's because they think their parents will overreact and call the principal or the other child's parents, or ban them from using the technologies as an attempt to protect them. And again, kids are attached to technology at their hip. It's like another appendage practically. And shutting them down from technology is one of the worst things that potentially can be done to help solve the problem. Related to this, they think that the adult will not be discreet and will make the situation worse, drawing attention to it. They also believe that the offenders and other kids will think they can't handle their own issues and that they're a snitch, a baby, or a wimp. And that, worst of all, the bullying may increase if the bullies find out that they've been reported. So where does that leave us? And what really, as parents and as educators, can we do? I'm going to start with what we can do as parents and state up front that there is no one broad stroke solution, like telling your kids to get off Facebook or making them give up their cell phones. As I said earlier, online communication tools are a part of the fabric of their lives. And because of the nature of cyberbullying, where kids play different roles at different times, it means that families might need to accept that even if your child is being victimized, he or she may not always have acted saintly online. And as a parent of 3 children, 2 of whom are teenagers, I can tell you that from experience. So here are some tips that take into account all of these different goals. Number 1, and I think first and foremost, and this goes without saying for kids, even as young as 2 years old, teach them empathy. Nothing really drives home a point faster than walking a mile in someone else's shoes. And if your kids truly understand what someone else is going through, they're less likely to bully someone or passively witness others being bullied. We also can help kids understand the line between funny and cruel. And that's a tough one because kids' online communication is often purposefully ambiguous or even accidentally cruel, both of which can lead to misunderstandings. And if drama starts brewing, you can ask your child to call or speak face-to-face with their friend to clear it up, not just let it fester. We should also make sure that our kids understand that they should have someone to talk to, even if it's not you as their parent. So as kids enter the middle school years, their circle of friends and trusted adults widen, and they need a responsible adult to confide in, whether that's their school counselor, their music teacher, their athletic coach, or even the parent of a friend. And talk to your child about who they can go to if there is trouble that's brewing or you're sensing that something is a little off. And I think one of the most important things, and I'll say this several times, is to help your child be an upstander, not a bystander. Kids are hesitant to get involved in case the bully turns their sights on them, but there are ways to allow your child to work behind the scenes to really reach out to the victim, get an adult involved, and prevent more cruel behavior. They can also use the reporting tools that many of the social networking sites offer. You should also show your child how to stop it and tell kids not to retaliate or to even respond. Not feeding the bully can stop the cycle, and it's a lot easier to walk away from a situation online than it is to walk away from a situation that is offline. And cooling down is a really good first step when you receive a mean message online. Tell your kids to take a deep breath, count backward from 10, or pause to think about what they should do next. And that will give them the time to really think of the best way to handle the situation. I know even myself, as an adult, there are situations where I quickly type a response to someone via email. Because adults, we still email. Our kids tend not to do that anymore. They text or they message each other through, whatever systems they may be on, Instagram, Facebook, or whatnot. But even as an adult, sometimes I get a work email and I find it's a little curse and I email a quick response or I type it up and then I realize, I'm probably misunderstanding things. And I just stop and inevitably, when I've taken enough deep breaths, I realize, okay, let's delete that and how can I go about this in a different way? And we can help teach our kids those skills, I think, from a young age. And also explain to them when you deprive bullies of the attention they crave, they may lose interest. And from an online perspective, you can also block bullies so that he or she can't send messages online. But if anything does happen online and it's repeated, start saving the evidence because you may need that to help build a case. And just like explaining to a child to talk to an adult that they trust, they can talk to a friend and help them understand that sometimes it can help them to talk it over, with a friend just through talking through it. And I think in addition to talking with your child, you may also consider going to the school and speaking with the principal, your child's teacher, or the counselor. But before you go, you should have the information you need to have those conversations. So first, I would suggest looking at whether the school or the district has a code of conduct and if you think it's been violated. If there have been expectations that have been set forth for student conduct at that school, you'll have more teeth for getting the school to take action, especially at the high school level. Also, you should think about if what your child is experiencing, even if it's on Facebook over the weekend, is imposing on their learning, their happiness, or connection to school. If so, again, you can build an argument that the school should take action. So on the topic of schools, the same principle really applies about there being no easy answer. There's just no silver bullet to this issue. Because when it comes to cyberbullying and digital harassment, technology is only a small part of the problem. Schools that foster social emotional learning, help kids build interpersonal skills, and don't really rely solely on a zero tolerance policy, which are often ineffective. These kinds of schools are better equipped to curb and address incidents of bullying, meanness, and cruelty, whether it's online or offline. And again, because the lines are blurring between the two, the kids often don't make a distinction, right? It's just bullying, no matter what context it may be coming from. So at Common Sense Media, we really recommend that schools take a holistic approach and that they do it proactively. They shouldn't wait for a situation to arise. They really need to develop policies that clearly outline how they'll deal with bullying and then communicate these policies to students, families, and faculty. Even better, create a committee with students and faculty and parents to help come up with some of these policies so there's more buy-in from these communities. And then the faculty needs training on how to navigate bullying and to learn how to respond when they see it happening. And if it's offline, how they can talk to kids if they come to them with problems, or they start seeing something play out where they're hearing about what somebody posted over the weekend on Instagram, for example, or on Twitter. Additionally, schools really need to educate students. And I don't mean a random, one-time only 45-minute assembly. They need to systematically, at every grade level and every year, work with kids to understand these issues and empower them. Because most importantly, and I said this earlier, kids really need to be encouraged to move from being bystanders to being upstanders. Research shows that more often than not, bystanders tend not to intervene, but when they do, they stop the bullying more than half the time. I think that's incredibly powerful. So if the one single thing we can do is get our kids to stand up for each other, we will have won half of the battle. Common Sense Media, as Lee said, really has a wealth of information for both parents as well as for educators that can help you address all these issues around cyberbullying and digital drama, including tips and guidance, videos, lists of apps and websites that can help kids build empathy, and even a full K-12 curriculum for schools that addresses digital citizenship topics. And best of all, it's free. So I encourage you to check it out at our site, which is www.commonsense.org, and look through some of those resources to see if they might be helpful to you. And if you're a parent, you should definitely check out to see what your school is doing in this regard, and encourage them to use Common Sense Media's curriculum or other curriculum that may be out there so that they're really educating students. I think it's important that schools not ignore these issues until it's too late or something happens in the school. Again, you really need to be proactive. Similarly, in your own home, I think it's hard oftentimes as a parent to think that your child may be the one that's doing the bullying. We often have conversations with our kids about how they protect themselves, but really engaging them in a conversation about how they protect other people is important. There's a woman we work with at Common Sense Media. Her name is Emily Bazelon, and she is an author that wrote this really fantastic book called Sticks and Stones, Defeating the Culture of Bullying and Rediscovering the Power of Character and Empathy. And she puts it this way: we don't need to preach at kids about bullying. We need to give them more opportunities to think through the social difficulties and realities that they're grappling with every day, online and off. So what I take from that is it's really about that conversation and about that open dialogue. And that's one of the reasons why just shutting them down from the technology isn't going to be terribly effective. It's about having that dialogue, recognizing where they're at and how they're feeling, and acknowledging sometimes that they may do stuff that we don't always like, and we have to work with them to understand a better path. So in closing, cyberbullying, yes, is a serious problem, and we need to pay attention to it and address it in our schools and homes. But it's important to really understand the context. Young people are far more likely to report positive online experiences than negative ones, and we shouldn't be afraid of the technology, right? It's not technology's fault. It's how our kids are using it. So we encourage embracing the technology, because your kids sure do, and teaching them how to use it responsibly.
Great, Rebecca. Thank you so much that was an incredible presentation. We've got a lot of great questions coming in, so if you're ready, we'll open it up to the Q&A.
I am ready.
Great. We got actually, I do want to start though. We got well, before we get going, to ask a question, please just hit *6. It'll put you in a queue, and I will be able to unmute you to ask your question. Again, that's *6. Or if you're not feeling so comfortable with asking a question directly, you can tweet it at us over Twitter using the hashtag #ExpertSeries. But we got a question in this morning that asked, how do we keep up with the rise of new social media apps, and what's the best resource for us as parents and educators to go to when trying to keep up with the new technologies?
Thank you for asking such an easy question first. I don't mean to sound self-serving, but I'm going to say it anyways. Common Sense Media is really the best resource out there. So for those of you that don't know who we are a nonprofit organization, and we've been around for about 10 years. We're based in San Francisco, so all the San Francisco folks who said they were on the phone, hi there, I'm down the street from you, wherever you may be in the city at the moment. And we exist because of all the media and technology in our kids' lives and the profound impact, for better and for worse, that it may have on them in terms of how they're engaging with it. And we rate and review all sorts of media, movies, TV shows, video games, apps, books, and music from a child development perspective as well as for its learning potential. And we do so in a non-ideological way. And we know that it's impossible to keep up, for the even more than average person, with all the new stuff that's coming down the pike, whether it's Ask.fm or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or WhatsApp. I mean, there's just so many that are out there. But we are constantly curating the reviews and the information. So if you hear about an app through the grapevine, you can check the review on our site to see if it's appropriate for your child based on how old they are. But most importantly, we give you the information so you can make the decision for your child, because we recognize that all families and children are different. And what may be a hot button for me may not be a hot button for another parent. So we really give you the information so you can make an informed decision. And also we give you points on how to talk to your children and things to watch out for in regard to certain apps or websites. In addition, we have a really comprehensive blog where we offer advice, so much advice, on all sorts of issues related to technology, not just cyberbullying, but also information like privacy and digital footprint and sexting, all of these issues that actually interact with cyberbullying. And then we have a whole other set of information for educators. So as I mentioned, we have a K-12 curriculum. We have an interactive learning experience called Digital Passport for kids in upper elementary schools, and a whole lot more that educators can use to teach kids about all of these issues and really empower them.
Great. So we will then, we've got a lot of questions coming in actually from the live end of the call. So we're going to open that up from 617.
This is Michael calling. Yeah, I'm calling from San Francisco, so I am down the street from you. And I work for a company that creates software that allows parents to basically monitor their kids' cell phone use so they can see what kind of calls are coming in, contacts, and software that the kids are using. I'm wondering if there's any sort of early warning system where a parent might notice patterns or types of contacts that the kid is having that would indicate cyberbullying.
I think that there are a few different ways that parents can look out for symptoms, and I'm talking more from an offline context than what may be happening online or through monitoring their cell phone. I think if you're monitoring, kids' media, it's going to be far more obvious what's happening. I also think it's important, and perhaps more so, to really be paying attention to children's behavior. So if all of a sudden there's a change in their behavior and they're showing symptoms of anxiety, depression, anger, they are withdrawing from the family, they are actually spending more time with technology, because there's this interesting converse effect where if kids are being bullied online, they tend to spend more time with technology because they're trying to navigate it and figure it out or respond to it and find sources that can help them. So paying attention to kids' behavior is the most important thing. And then certainly for parents that do choose to go the route of monitoring their kids' cell phone use or their use of social networking sites like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, we encourage parents generally to be upfront with their children, to let them know that they are doing so, because we think that it opens that dialogue. Because I'll tell you, if you are in a situation where you've been monitoring your kids' media and their communications and something comes up, trying to figure out how to approach them with that information is going to be really difficult, and they'll claim, and as a parent, you have every right to do what you think is right for your kids, but your children will no doubt claim that it was a breach of their privacy, and they are not going to be able to get over that breach to listen to anything that you may have to say about the interaction that they may have had, no matter how profound and on target it may be, because they're going to be stuck on that breach of privacy. So again, if you do use any kind of monitoring software, we do encourage you to be upfront with your children about that.
So the next question is from 760. You there? All right, we will go to the next question. From 516.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Yuvraj from New York. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. I have a question, actually. As a victim of bullying student, is there a way that I can assist in proposing an anti-bullying law in the state or federally? Based on just because I know a lot of cyberbullying laws aren't so clear, and especially
that is very true. Your neighbor, New Jersey, actually, has probably one of the strongest and clearest cyberbullying laws that's out there. I'm not sure off the top of my head if New York does, but it's something that you can check into. I will tell you that on a federal level, all schools that receive E-rate funds, which are like 99% of them, it's schools that have a significant percentage of kids receiving free and reduced price lunch, and they receive E-rate to purchase discounts for broadband and infrastructure, so wiring, networking, and whatnot. So pretty much schools that are using technology, they're getting E-rate funds. They are all mandated to have a internet safety policy that has provision for educating students about cyberbullying awareness and response. But whether or not schools are actually doing anything about that is another story. I'm not sure where in New York you are, but I do know that New York City Department of Education is doing quite a bit to make sure that schools are complying with that and teaching kids about how to be safe and responsible and ethical online. And there are definitely other districts in New York that have done so as well. I'm not sure how much legislation actually does, though, because oftentimes there's not a whole lot of enforcement associated with it. There's really no teeth. And so I think that an approach, in addition to legislation, because that's not to say it doesn't do anything. It does. I think it oftentimes wakes up administrators to taking action on it. But oftentimes it's when schools are hearing from their own communities, so starting a petition. I mean, that's one of the great things about the Internet is that there's so many different ways that you can start petitions and you can bring causes to light. So I would recommend, looking at your community and finding out what your school is doing or isn't doing, and perhaps starting a petition, getting people together online and offline to encourage the district to adopt policies and a vision around how to educate students and to deal with these issues.
Rebecca, if you could actually expand on that a little bit, just in terms of, schools being liable for off-campus behavior when it comes to cyberbullying. That was kind of an issue that came up last week in our call with Nell Kimmel at Public Justice. Do you see trends where schools are actually acting without policy to actually take action against off-campus behavior like cyberbullying?
That is a complicated question with a very complicated answer, in large part because what is happening across the country is incredibly disparate, and the courts have been ruling differently depending on where the school may be, or even different rulings in the same state. So, one, schools may or may not have a policy, right? Better for schools to have a policy, and then when something happens that they are using that policy to take action, right? Even with the policy, they could still be sued for taking that action, or conversely sued for not taking action when a parent believes that the school didn't step in and do enough. I am not a lawyer, so what I'm about to say here is not offering legal advice, but
right.
From my understanding and what I know about schools and cyberbullying and the laws associated with it, is that if a school shows substantial disruption to the school or to the student in school, then they are justified in taking action. So by that I mean it can range anywhere from if a student is experiencing cyberbullying completely online, not during the school day, not using school devices, but there's harassment that's happening, and it impacts their behavior and their feelings and their actions in school, then the school is justified in taking action. That's sort of one piece. Another piece is if there is disruption to the administrator's life in trying to navigate an issue. So, for example, if a parent calls the school and tries to deal with something and it's resolved in 45 minutes, and then the school takes action, but the only disruption was that 45-minute phone call, certain courts have found that that does not constitute substantial disruption. Conversely, if that 45 minutes actually took place over the period of 3 weeks and the principal's time was solely dedicated to dealing with this one particular incident as opposed to all of the other issues that are arising in that particular school, that would probably constitute substantial disruption.
Thank you so much for expanding on that, and sorry if I put you on the spot a little bit. I know it's of interest to a lot of people who are on the call tonight. We've got another question.
I have answers. Again, it doesn't necessarily constitute legal advice, but
right.
As best as I know and as I understand it through our relationships with lawyers that work with schools.
So we've got another call in, question in. Are you there?
Yes, I think it's us.
There you go.
This is Ann and Melanie from Hubbard. I'm going to try and keep this as short as I can. I'm a little long-winded, so I'll apologize ahead of time. My daughter has been bullied for over 5 years now. The school, they work with me, but they really haven't, taken the bull by the horns, for lack of better terms. So we decided to start our own essentially club or anti-bullying group. We are calling it Communities Against Bullying, CAB for short. And basically, I guess what I want to know is, do you have any suggestions on where to get started? We've been doing research. We've got a meeting place. We've got a Facebook page. Anything that you could provide to us that would be helpful.
Have you, and do you have what's your primary goal?
Our primary goal is to promote awareness and to educate and to basically give parents and students somewhere to come and get information and get tools so that we can try and nip things in the bud, because the school doesn't have any anti-bullying programs. There's nothing in our community.
And the school has been resistant to implementing them?
Yes, they have. There's actually been a couple groups that have said that they'd like to work with the school, and the school has denied it. They have a zero bullying tolerance, but they just, I'm not going to say that they're difficult, but it just doesn't seem to be very helpful.
Right. That is a very frustrating situation, and I commend you for pulling together a group of people to really try to take action. So, I think that there are a few different things that potentially, you may consider. One is if the school categorically is refusing to do anything proactively, I don't think that there's anything that the parent community or the community can necessarily do from a legal standpoint to get them to do so, unless there are two caveats, unless the school receives E-rate funds. So that is something to look at because, again, if your school is receiving E-rate funds, they are mandated to have an internet safety policy that provides for the provision of cyberbullying awareness and response behavior, right? So that's one. So if they do receive E-rate, you've got more teeth. Also, your state may have some type of bullying or cyberbullying legislation, and that would be something to look at as well. Short of that, if you perhaps get enough parents together and raise enough of a stink, which you can do through online, through meetings in person, or potentially press too. I think that what you're really trying to do is you're trying to do something positive, and bringing the press in and putting a little bit of pressure on the school to do something proactively, may not necessarily be a bad strategy. So that's sort of one element. The other direction that you could go is you could say it may not be worth our efforts right now to engage the school. Let's look at other mechanisms to educate students and to educate parents about these issues. And I hate to sound like a broken drum, but Common Sense Media really does have a wealth of information and advice that you could share with other parents in your communities. We have videos that can be watched. Speaking of videos, oftentimes we've worked with school districts, and if your school isn't on board, I'm not entirely sure how this would work, but going to public access cable television to run some of the student videos or the parent videos we have may be another mechanism for getting the word out about this and really raising awareness and response. I would imagine you have a lot of mothers groups in your community, and using them to spread the word and to share tips and tools so that you're kind of handling the education on your own. Oftentimes after school programs are hungry for content that they can be sharing with their kids, and the information and curricula that we've created for schools can just as easily be used in an after-school environment or in libraries. We have scripted parent presentations with slides and talking points so that if you wanted to have a parent night on cyberbullying, you would have all the information you needed to do so. So again, check out our website. There may be some pieces there that you can use once you decide the best pathway to move forward.
So we got a good question in on Twitter, actually, from @UMass_dad, if you're out there. And his question was, what can we do about the anonymity aspect of cyberbullying?
The anonymity, which I can never say, anonymity aspect of cyberbullying. My short answer, which is not a very good one, is unfortunately not much. I think that the reality, though, is that most kids are operating on social networking sites using their real names and information because that is how their friends can find them. So in the case of, say, Facebook, which despite the fact that kids may be migrating away from it, Facebook and Instagram and some, to some degree even Twitter, you can't be found on any of those sites by your friends and the people you want to find you unless you're using your real name. So I think that, there's that aspect where some of it's not entirely anonymous. But I do think, certainly on sites like ask.fm and others, that anonymity does very much come into play. Personally, I really was upset with FormSpring and ask.fm and had a conversation, particularly with my teenage daughter, about them. And we talked about why she was on them. And eventually she came to the conclusion on her own that she didn't want to be on them and that she found it stressful and she just wasn't really enjoying the experience. And she pulled off of the site all on her own with a lot of encouragement. But still, it was really a decision that she came to on her own because I shared my feelings about it. And I didn't say you have to be off of it, but here's why I don't like it, and here's why I don't think it's good. And, what do you see? What do you think? And she ultimately decided she didn't want to be anonymous. That said, anonymity does sometimes play a positive role, not as it relates to harassment, but I think that, there are still parts of our country and parts of our world where kids in their own communities may feel marginalized for who they are. And the anonymity of the Internet gives them an opportunity to explore who they are and who they want to be in a relatively safe space in a way that they wouldn't feel comfortable doing otherwise. So to do away with anonymity in its entirety online, I don't really think is the answer. Education and talking to kids about kind of where you can be anonymous and where you can't. And then there are also sites, that really say anonymity is not a good thing, and they intentionally, have you sign up with kind of your, at least, what they hope is your real name, and they don't allow you to post anonymously. And so encouraging kids to go on those sites.
So we've got about 2 more questions here, and we've got one in from 607.
This is Celia from New York.
Hi, Celia.
Yes, hi. First of all, I want to say that Common Sense Media is absolutely a fantastic site, and I'm always putting it on resource lists for families. I think it's terrific what you do for our country. But
thank you,
I have 2 programs that I'm a school social worker in Ithaca, and I have 2 programs that in elementary school and in a middle and high school that are upstander programs. And I feel very strongly that's the only way to go in terms of changing the culture of your school and really preventing bullying. So my question is that last week, one of my upstanders from my middle and high school school came to me and said, we think we need to have our program needs to have a presence online to be upstanders online. And my question to you is, what would that look like? How can other students be upstanders online? Because what actually happens is that they try to stop it, but inadvertently they actually flame it. What would you recommend that I work with them on so that they can be better upstanders?
Are you interested in going beyond your school community? Is it a conversation that your students want to be having online and keeping within your own community, or is it something that you're
in their friendship groups when the bullying starts happening or the harassment or the drama? It's usually drama. What can they be doing? What can we be teaching students in terms of being upstanders when they see that happening amongst their own community?
Mm-hmm. I think what can be really powerful is teaching a common vocabulary and a common way of responding that becomes part of the fabric of how they operate and is an accepted way of engaging online to behavior. So work with the group of students that are the upstanders to come up with a series of responses for behavior and interactions that they are seeing online, and then have them vet that with the rest of their peers. It could be some really interesting voting process, and there are tons of sites out there, where you could come up with a list of these responses, and then you get people's buy-in on them, so that then when they're being used and people see them online, they know where they are, where they're coming from, and they've bought into it a little bit. That may be one idea to move forward with.
So we've got time for about one more question here, and it's from 760. Are you there?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello? Yeah, hi. Okay, I was calling from my computer. So, not to repeat anything that's been said already, I hear a lot of talk about teaching kids how to navigate on the internet. And what I'd like to say is that I think parents who are bringing kids into the world at a very early age, if there was some program for them so that they could actually start teaching their kids a way of thinking much earlier than we already do, because we're waiting until the kids have already developed bad habits, learned from their peers, and then we're trying to fix these problems. But by then it's really too late, because we've allowed them to be influenced, and I know the media is a big culprit, and so it's very important that we shelter our kids early enough from certain things so that we don't have to try and undo the damage. On bullying, a lot of the parents are actually bullies themselves, and so the kids really are just behaving the way that they've been taught. And I think a little more parent intervention or parent training or awareness has to be a bigger focus, so that we're not first messing the kids up and then scrambling around to figure out a way to fix them. So my question is that, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, is there a early program we can adopt for parents that are literally taking their kids to kindergarten and bringing them into this world so that we don't get them messed up and try to fix it later?
We recommend at Common Sense Media starting conversations with your children as early as when they go online. And we have tips for parents of very young children, 2 years old, to talk to them in a developmental way about the media and the technology that they are consuming, so that when they do start engaging in a more interactive way, they already have good habits in place. So, I wholeheartedly agree about starting young. In fact, our curriculum goes down to the kindergarten age, and we have assets that can be used in kindergarten classrooms, but also parents can show their own kids at home to educate them. And Common Sense is, always trying to get the word out to parents about really being aware of these issues and to take action, because parents have a huge role to play. And I think an issue that you raised that hadn't come up previously, but is a really important one, is that we are our children's role models. And when they see us texting while we are driving, when they see us mouthing off to drivers that do something we don't like, when they see us at the dinner table taking out our cell phone and texting someone angrily, they emulate that behavior. And we need to remember that and really rein ourselves in so that we aren't dealing with a situation that is out of control by the time kids hit middle school, because that's when the hormones start raging, and it's when they start engaging more and more with social media. So starting young, very important, and also role modeling behavior.
Great. Well, that's about the hour mark, and just for folks' times, we typically do wrap there. But I want to thank you, Rebecca, for this incredible call. This is another great step in our expert series. And if there's anything, last sort of items that you'd like to share with our audience before we head out, please do.
I think I've said it all, and I just thank you, Ryan and Lee, for setting up these calls, for the work that you guys have done with the Bully Project, and for all of you for taking time out of your very busy days and evenings for some of you, as it now hits 5 o'clock here in California. That is 8 o'clock for those of you on the East Coast. So your day is really over. And I just appreciate the time that you took and for your participation, and encourage you to go back into your communities, share what you are learning, and really engage your children and your schools in these conversations.
Great. And so if anybody does have a question that you would like to pose, please send it to info@thebullyproject.com, or like tonight, you can tweet at us at BullyMovie using the hashtag #ExpertSeries. We have a great call next week with the National Center for Learning Disabilities with a gentleman by the name of Sheldon Horowitz. He'll be speaking on bullying and special needs. And we invite you all to attend. We'll be sending out that information on our variety of different social media platforms and through our newsletter. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for your questions. It's been incredibly insightful, great, intelligent discussion, and we look forward to having you on the calls in the future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.